Okay, so this is Unit 6, Lesson 4, where we are exploring measures of central tendency. So our goals here are to calculate mean, median, and mode, both from raw data lists and from frequency tables. And we'll be doing that both by hand and with the calculator, so you'll be able to see both methods. So first, it's helpful to just review what measures of central tendency are. So measures of central tendency are ways to summarize data. So there's three main ones. The mode is the value that occurs most frequently. The median is the value that's in the middle when the data is arranged in order. And the mean is basically the average, which is the sum of all the values divided by the number of values. So hopefully these things are a bit familiar to you from previous years in math. So one thing about the median, when there are two middle values, the median is the midpoint between them. So you would add the two middle values and divide by 2. So let's start with some straightforward examples where we have a raw data set and we're finding each of these by hand. So when we look at data set A, the mean is going to be the sum of all the numbers and then we're going to divide by the number of numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that sum we can do on the calculator. Plus 4, plus 5, plus 5, plus 6, oops, plus 5, plus 6, plus 7. So 3, 6, 5, 6, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, and then we're going to take that sum and divide by 9. So our mean is approximately equal to 5.22 rounded to 3 sig figs. For the mode, we're going to write the data set in order. So maybe I should organize this a little bit better. So this is part I. For the mode, we're going to write the data in increasing order. So we're going to start with a 3, then we have a 4, and then we have 3 5s. This will also help us for the median. I find it a little bit easier for the mode. We have 3 6s, and we have a 7. So the mode, there are actually 2, 5 and 6. So this is what we call a bimodal data set because it has 2 modes. And then the median, we can just look at the data set that I've already arranged in order and we can get to the middle of the data set. So you can do this by crossing off one value from each end until you get to the middle. So once you get to the middle, that is your median value. So let's do the same thing for set B. So the mean, again, is going to be the sum of all the values. (16, 15, 15, 17). 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 values. So we're going to have to find that sum first. So this is a good way to show your work when you're doing these calculations on a test or an exam. Show the formula you used and your final answer as well. Okay, and then we divide that by 10, and that should give us a mean of exactly 14.8. For the median and mode, again, it can be helpful to write it in order. So we'll start with the 12, 13, 13, 1, 14, 3 15s, a 16, a 17, and an 18. And I should still have 10 numbers. I do. So the mode is the most frequent, which is 15, because there's 3 of those. And then for the median, I have to again find the middle. So start from the ends and cross off values. Now this time I'm left with 2. So the median is the midpoint between them, which is 15 plus 15 over 2. But because those are the same, that just means my median is 15. So that's how you can do it by hand. It doesn't take too terribly long, but occasionally questions will say you just need to write down the mean, median, and or mode. And then you can do it on the calculator, which might be a little bit faster. So we'll go through how to do this on the calculator. So here are two raw data sets, and we're going to use the calculator to find each of the three main measures of central tendency: the mean, the median, and the mode. So when you're doing this, the first thing you're going to do is enter the data set into your calculator. So just like we did with histograms, you're going to go to Stat, and you're going to go to Edit, and you're going to clear your lists so you can enter some new data, and you're just going to enter the data as you see it. So 7, 3, 8, 9, 1, 10, 1. So now that we've entered the data, we're going to go back to the Stat menu, and this time we want to calculate something. So we're just going to toggle over to where it says Calc, and we're going to pick the very first option, which is one variable stats. It's going to bring you to a menu that looks like this. It's asking you two things. Where's your list of data? It's in L1. It's also going to ask you for a frequency list. That's relevant when you have a frequency table, but we don't have that. So you're actually going to clear that because all we have is the singular list. So we have a list in L1, we're going to calculate these stats, and then you're going to get a very long list of information. So the first thing at the top here is the mean. So X bar is the notation for mean, and that you can round to 3 sig figs. So 5.57 is the mean. We'll learn what all of these other things are later on when we get to more relevant stats things. But the other thing you're looking for is MED. That tells you your median. So your median is 7. Now the calculator doesn't tell you the mode, so you just have to do that by eye. So when I look at this data set, the most frequent value is the 1. So there are two values that are equal to 1, so that's the mode. So when you do the next one, you do the same thing, except you're going to enter a different data set this time. So back to Stat, back to Edit. I'll get rid of this data set here, and I'll enter the new one. So 3, 4, 8, 2, 5, 6, 11, 13, 3, 5, 6, and 5. So I'm going to go back to Stat, back over to Calc, and back to my statistics. My list is in L1, so I'm going to calculate my statistics. So my mean is approximately equal to 5.92. My median, I'm going to scroll down, is 5. And my mode, again, I have to do this by eye. I have 3 5s, and that looks like the most frequent. So my mode is 5. So that's how you can use your calculator to calculate mode, median, and mean for raw data sets. So that's for straight sets of data where you just have the full list. Approaches are a bit different both by hand and on the calculator when you have a frequency table. So let's take a look at some examples there. So when you have a frequency table, things are just slightly different. So the mode is still the entry that is the most common. This manifests as the entry with the largest frequency. The median, because the table is already in order, is the value that falls in the n+1/2 place. So you would calculate this and then look for where that place falls, and we'll do that together in this example. And the mean is actually the sum of your frequencies times your values, and then divide by the total frequency. So you see this in your formula booklet. It looks a little different, but that's what the formula looks like in the booklet. So this notation sigma means the sum, and then n is the number of values. So all of this will make a little bit more sense when we actually do an example. So here's an example where we have a data set. We did this, I think, in the in lesson 2, where you have the number of sweets and the frequency for each of those. So let's start with the mean. So what we can do is add a column to our table where we're going to multiply together the frequency and the number. So we're going to take the Fi, which is the frequency value, and multiply by the Xi, which is the data value. So for example, 20 times 2 is 40. 21 times 3 is 63. 22 times 13 I will do on my calculator, and that is 286. 23 times 4 is 92, and 24 times 2 is 48. So when I add all those numbers together, I'll get the total frequency, or the total number of numbers, which is 529. So the reason this works is because if the data was written as a list, we'd start with 2 values of 20. So you'd start with 20, 20, then you'd have 3 21s, and so on. I'm not going to write out the whole list because there's 24 different numbers, but that's why it works, because if you were finding the average from the list, you do 20 plus 20, which is 40, 21 3 times, which is 63, so and so on. So this column is kind of a shortcut for finding that sum. So your mean is going to be the sum of the values times the frequencies, which is 529, divided by the number of numbers, which is 24. So 529 divided by 24 is approximately 22. Not exactly 22, but approximately. The median is the most frequent value. So the frequency is highest when the number of sweets is 22. Oh, sorry, that's the mode. The mode is the most frequent value. So that occurs at 22. Now the median, first we're going to calculate n plus 1 over 2. So our number of values is 24. So 24 plus 1 over 2, which is 25 divided by 2, which is 12 and a half. 12 and a half is not the median. This is just telling us where to look for the median. So the median will be between the 12th and 13th number in the list. Now we don't want to have to write out the whole list, so we can just think to ourselves, okay, in the list I'd have 2 numbers, then I'd have 3 numbers, that would take me up to 5, and then I'd have 13. That takes me up to 18 numbers. So the 12th and 13th will definitely fall in this list of 22s over and over again. So that means our median is 22. So you have to kind of imagine it as if it were a list. Where would the 12th number be? It would be a 22. So would the 13th number. So in between them, it would still be a median of 22. So that's how you do it for a frequency table. It's just like a little bit different than if you're doing it by hand. The last example is we will take a frequency table and find these stats using your calculator. So here we have the throw of a die. It's been thrown 29 times, and the score each time is recorded. So we have score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because there's 6 sides, and the frequency for each score. So the modal score, our calculator can't tell us this, but it's the most frequent score. So when we scan the table, the most frequent score is 4, so that's our modal score. The median can be told to us on our calculator. So once again, we have to enter our data. So this is an example where we're going to actually have 2 columns in our data. So we're going to clear our list. Our first column is going to be the scores, and the second column is going to be the frequency. So we have to tell the calculator both pieces of information. So 4, 7, 3, 8, 5, 2. So when we go to stat and calc, same place as before, one variable stats, even though there's two columns, it's still just one variable, which is the score. This time, our list is in L1, but we do have a frequency list, and that's in L2. So L2 is shown right above the 2 button. So if you press second 2, you'll be able to type L2. So you do have to tell the calculator that there are two lists, otherwise you won't get the correct results. So here we go, we get all of our stats. Our median is 4, so that's at the bottom there of the calculator screen, MED equals 4. And our mean, which is the very first entry, is approximately equal to 3.31. So that's how you would use your calculator to find statistic or measures of central tendency for a frequency table. So it's important that you're able to complete mean, median, and mode both for raw data sets and for frequency tables by hand and with the calculator. And if you have to do it by hand, the calculator is a great way to check your answer after the fact. So hopefully you feel comfortable tackling the homework, and in the next lesson we will look at measures of central tendency for grouped frequency tables.